Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Portsmouth City Council work session for Monday, June 2nd at the Eileen Dondero Foley City Council chambers. The purpose of this work session, we're getting some feedback just for the record out there, not in the nature of political yet. This is for the purpose of consideration of the renewed lease for the Crick AC. Councilor Spear made a motion, and the City Council voted to have a work session, and here we are. You have an item in your packet, and an additional item apparently has been passed out. Councilor Spear.
Thank you, Your Honor. In the spring, we renewed the lease for the Crick AC in 251 Bartlett Street. Now, at the time, I had some reservations about the lease, but given the narrow time frame and the many other things we had on the agenda, I decided we should continue with the lease so that we could discuss this in a more leisurely and relaxed time frame this summer. So here we are. The Mayor's Blue Ribbon Committee on Building Reuse created guidelines for non-municipal public uses, which I've handed out to you tonight. And to give you a sense of what public use might be. But before we discuss those, I'll just say briefly, looking over the public uses on these guidelines, which could be amended, of course, it didn't seem to me that the Crick AC fit any of those criteria. And so I didn't think that the lease should be continued as it was currently written. So, however, in talking with others, I've gotten some ideas, other ways to approach the lease, and I've listed them here. They include a variety of things, including renting the building at the market rate, selling the building outright, and so then the property tax, obviously, we would collect that. Having a lease-to-own agreement with the Crick AC, or some other public use, for example, using the building as a publicly managed facility similar to the Greenleaf Center. And these are just ideas, and this is a work session, so we don't have to have anything definitive today. But I'm hoping to begin the process today so that with enough time that we have right now, that we'll have a better idea what to do with this space in the future. So before I close, one of the things that I was thinking about when I was looking at the lease, I wasn't on the committee for building reuse, but I just had a sense that the use that the club was using the facility for, to me, wasn't a public use, but I didn't know exactly what that meant. And I was very glad to see later on, I ran across these guidelines, and it really kind of itemizes different kinds of public non-municipal uses. And so if Your Honor would let me, I'd like Councilor Dwyer to kind of go over what these uses might be, explain where they came from and stuff like that.
Sure. Councilor Dwyer.
And just for the record, Ken, Laura, and I were all on that committee, and we all had divvied up some different tasks during that time, and I did work on the public uses. So as it says in the opening, we went through the master plan at that time to identify what kinds of public uses were envisioned in the master plan. So these topics, will be familiar to you because they essentially come from sections of the master plan. We did at least one, maybe two of our open discussions on the building reuse, asked for feedback, gave the presentation on a draft form of this and asked for feedback from people attending. And we did get a few modifications which are represented in here for clarification of language. One that I remember well, I think, is clarifying the green space to make it more usable green space as opposed to simply open space. And I think the recreation was also modified in language, not really in spirit, but there were modifications that came from the public discussion to these. So as it says at the opening, these are based on the master plan 2005 and should be updated accordingly, but at least at that point, these were what the committee and then the members of the public who paid attention at that point agreed were a good list of public uses.
Thank you, Councilor Dwyer, for the explanation.
Let me just say, Councilor Spear asked me this the other day, as I remember it, but Laura and Ken added, we never specifically discussed the role of social clubs within a public use, because I think at the time, we were going from the master plan. We weren't really going from what are current uses and do they fit public use or not. We were going from what is in the master plan. Yep, is that your recollection?
Absolutely.
And okay, Laura.
Yeah, we also had in there for public benefit, was also put into that.
That's right.
So,
That's a good point. That's what we were really meaning by public use, public benefit.
public benefit.
So, just so that I understand, the report was done, we have the Building Reuse Committee report, we have the guidelines. They say what they say, and we talk about how this might fit or not fit. So, with that, and I think it's fair for counselors, just for history for the newer counselors, the master plan became part of the parlance of everybody even before it reached its final permutation. I think that's a fair statement, so just for the record. Further comments, discussion? Councilor Reynolds.
Well, just a comment. I was not a member of the Committee on Building Reuse, but I was on the council during the time that it was convened, and my recollection is certainly that it was one of the most thorough and well-run processes, very public process that I'd ever seen and that I could imagine. And I remember getting an update, at least one, and then we got an exhaustive presentation at the end, and very professionally done. I remember thinking, and it was comment that, boy, if we'd paid a consultant to run this thing, I don't know if we'd have gotten such a great process and a great product. It was a very exhaustive process, lots of public input into this topic, which was something of a hot topic, I suppose, at the time, because we were talking about sort of high-stakes public buildings like the library, like the Old South Meeting House. So in the Pantheon, this little Crick AC building is kind of a small piece, but the thinking and the criteria that went into, what should be our criteria for the disposal, disposition, and use of public buildings was quite thorough, and I think they deserve a lot of weight in the...
Thank you. Yep. A question for the city manager, just by seeing no hands up. A lot of the public buildings we have had inquiries about their use, the Children's Museum, et cetera. Have we had a lot of inquiries about the Crick AC?
The only inquiry that we've had on the Crick AC has been by the fire department to make it a museum for the fire department. Now, that's something that, again, would require a little bit more research and discussion on what would entail having a museum there and who would run it, who would pay for it, that type of thing. That's the only inquiry that we've had. The items that Councilor Spear has listed here, 1 through 4, I think is probably what we should be really the focus of when we get down to next year, within 6 months of the lease. I'd like to really, start sitting down in the fall and talk to the representative from the Creek AC, because there's really a couple things in here that if one way or another we need to, as the council needs to do from a policy perspective, maybe do a more long-term lease if they choose to with the Creek AC to set it up so that, and with criteria within that on what would be public benefit, and then that way the building could be maintained and the stewardship of the building would continue, specifically from the exterior. If you look at the attachments that I've provided you, you'll notice that it's primarily the area that we're talking, the 1 acre, 1.105 acres is the playground, which we're looking at upgrading. As you're aware, we're looking at upgrading. The Creek AC is a very small part of this entire parcel. So, I would have to say that it is a small building. It's a building that needs a lot of work. We need somebody to maintain it and keep it up. It's a historic building to a certain degree. And so, I think we as a council, you as a council would have to make some determinations. But I think if it could be done in such a way, if it was to determine to go forward with the Creek AC for a number of years with public benefit outlined within the agreement, I think you need to do multiple years so they can put money into it. If not, then we need to look at other uses. I mean, and how are we going to fund those other uses? They're a good steward of the building now. If it was empty, it would fall into disrepair rather quickly. So,
Counselor Clayburgh.
I guess my feeling is that, I know in previous information that I've received, the club is 75 years old. Is that correct? It's been the Crick AC for 75 years.
well, you have all the history on the.
Right,
yeah.
it's, I guess I look at it as, it's a part of the history of Portsmouth. When you learn about Portsmouth, you learn soon about some of the, I don't know if you want to call it idiosyncrasies, but some of the unique features, that's a better word, of what we have in Portsmouth. And I guess I would immediately think of something like the Creek AC. They maintain the building well. It's an attractive building. It's painted, it's landscaped, it's part of the neighborhood. I guess I would want to know what the neighborhood thinks about it, what the members of the Creek AC think about it. My initial gut reaction is to just keep it the way it is, because it is part of a neighborhood. It is something that's been going on for 75 years. There is some public service that the club does. They have the scholarship for the Portsmouth High School. They have the fire engine that they maintain. They have several outings for the neighborhood. I don't know if maybe some of those activities could be expanded on, and I think my worst fear is driving down Bartlett Street and seeing, now that the city, let's say if the Creek AC doesn't have it anymore, the city has it, and as City Manager Bohenko said, it's in horrible disrepair. Why should the city take on a building when we have an organization that's very successfully maintaining and running that building? So I guess I don't know if I'm sentimental or nostalgic or whatever, but I say just leave it the way it is. It's 75 years old. It's been a success in our community, and I think we should just keep it the way it is.
Counselor Smith.
Thank you. I know one of the things that we did discuss at the Blue Ribbon Committee, and that was the not to sell this building because of its proximity to the park that was there, and that this should be maintained. So I know a couple of the options that Councilor Spear has placed out is the possibility of either do a lease to own or an outright sell of the building, and I would not be in favor of those by any means. The current lease that they have is not for $1.
It comes out to approximately the taxes.
It comes out to be what it would be in
Because it's
taxes.
assessed value of $98,000, and if you multiply the out by the tax rate, it's within a couple
So it's
dollars.
within, it's no longer at that dollar rate.
No,
That has
it's
gone up,
15.
which was, again, a recommendation of the Blue Ribbon.
Correct.
And as well as, we did discuss with the Creek AC, because they do take care of the Eureka. They do also provide some of the food and so forth that goes on for the night out that we have, the neighborhood night out groups. And I think they've been a good steward of the Creek AC. And if anything, I'd like to see them remain there, and a possibility of maybe giving a longer-term lease so that if they wanted to do some more upkeep and stewardship of the building.
Counselor Penelakis.
Yes, when I first learned that they were paying just $1 a year, it upset me. I thought that was wrong. But we had a tour of the building by the reuse committee. It's very well kept there. The Eureka is there. I don't know where we would put that. I didn't see anybody else come up and say they'd take it. That is a benefit to the city. I think that if people felt that the benefit wasn't there, that people didn't see the Eureka, that maybe we could speak with them and they might set up something for kids to see it. But since it's come up and it's paying its fair share, I have no problem with it. I'd like to see it stay.
Further discussion. Counselor Dwyer.
Sort of to lay out a few other things that haven't been brought forth that they kind of don't necessarily move us in one direction or another, but for consistency with the other kinds of things that we did within building reuse. One of the things that we did say, and it's come to mind recently with the letter that we received from the Friends of the South End, that during the building reuse, we did say that if a neighborhood, the neighborhood association around a building wished to take on the responsibility for a building public building located in its neighborhood, that we would give them first priority. Now, I haven't heard that the neighborhood association in this area has asked to do that or wants to do that, but I wanted to put that out there because, you know, it was only a couple months ago that we were dealing with a similar issue with the Children's Museum, and so we were very solicitous, I think is the word, of the Friends of the South End, and said that we would, in that case, give them first priority for what they wanted to do. So I think that's important to mark that. Should the neighborhood association here wish to take such a thing on, I would also say when we had the public hearing, and the neighbors may have changed their mind by now, but certainly you would not have called that public hearing friendly from the neighbors toward the use of this building. I know since that time, some of these changes have been put in place. The lease has changed in dollars, and there has been some more public outreach. So in terms of like an order for, you know, how you might deal with the building, I think we've already gone on record in other cases as saying a neighborhood association would have first dibs. Now, it wouldn't happen like that, but if there was to be some turnover. Now, that was the last council, so I understand this council may feel differently. A second would be, I think you would want to give a good opportunity for others to identify if there is a different public benefit. That was, again, the spirit of the whole thing, a primary public benefit, not an ancillary public benefit. I'm not sure that, you know, the small size of this makes, you know, it's not going to be an economic development engine. It's not going to be affordable housing, et cetera. So the small size of this may make that moot. And then the third would be to then rent to a private, non-public use. I mean, in the guidelines that were set up, that seems to be the order to me. Neighborhood association, opportunity for public use, opportunity for private use.
Assistant Mayor.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with several of the councilors that, you know, I'm personally like to see the Creek AC maintain stewardship of this building. They have taken good care of it. You know, it is one of the things that is the fabric of Portsmouth, these kinds of groups. Certainly, if they decided on their own that they wanted to disband and vacate the building, then I think it should be opened up to a neighborhood association for another use, or maybe to the fire department for a museum. But I would not be obliged to be in favor of, in a sense, evicting this group that's been there for so long, that's taken good care of the building. We've just raised their rent significantly, and I think the idea of giving them a longer-term lease to provide them the opportunity to, you know, do some improvements to the building that may be necessary to continue the good feeling they have with the neighborhood. I've talked to some of the neighborhood people in there one-on-one, and they kind of indicated to me that it's part of the neighborhood. You know, that's the way they feel about it. With the park next to it, it sort of fits in, and I think they've cooperated and will continue to cooperate with the neighborhood night out, maybe uses that involve the playground behind it, certainly opening up the Eureka to public viewing, or certainly for the parade. And there again, like I say, it's the kinds of things like the Creek AC that make Portsmouth Portsmouth.
Councilor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't disagree with what the assistant mayor just said, or the favorable things that some of my colleagues have said about the Creek AC's past use and present use of this building. There's no question that the lease to this local, you know, group, historic group, is a decent and respectable use of this building. I think our question, though, what should guide our decision-making on this is it the highest and the best use of this community asset? If indeed, and I'm sure that they are. So the fact that the Creek AC is a part of the community and a part of the neighborhood perhaps should lend itself to consideration of whether, as Councilor Dwyer said, could, if the building were to become more of a North Mill Pond neighborhood association, Friends of the North Mill Pond, or a larger neighborhood group headquarters open for public use, certainly I would think that the Creek AC still be able to use it for its meetings periodically, but it would be open to a larger number of people. That's my just wondering why. I don't know that the two are mutually exclusive. That's what I wanted to throw in here.
Councilor Spear.
Just to remark that I understand the lease has gone up from $1 to the tax rate, which is a good thing, but even at that higher rate, it's, as long as we're below the market rate, we're still subsidizing a private club, which I'm not against. Social clubs, as we remarked, have a special place in Portsmouth. I just want to make sure that as we subsidize their property, we make sure, as Councilor Reynolds said, that's the best use for that property. And it very well might be. I have no doubt that could very well be the possibility. So I'm wondering if between now and maybe we can give ourselves 18 months to have some public input from people in that community or other nonprofits in the city that might want to have a use for that building. So I just want us to do the due diligence before we commit to that. So that
City Manager?
I know that Councilor Dwyer had spoke about the South End group, and as they started, we've met with them on a couple of occasions, as they started looking into it, they've seen the cost of maintaining the building and the what it would take for any organization to take on that responsibility, specifically at the South Meeting House. And I think they're more inclined to want to work with us on what goes on there, but I think they're less likely now and into the future to have a role to control it as an organization. I think they expect the city to control it, and if be the last resort if something goes wrong in the building, it needs to be fixed right away. So I just want to say that in people's minds, it always starts out as a good idea, but when you start putting down the pro forma on the costs, then who then is responsible and who will sign on the dotted line for that responsibility becomes less enticing. It doesn't say that we shouldn't look at that, but I just think it's important to know how that's evolved over in the South End.
Assistant Mayor.
Yeah, I wanted to go further and just thank Councilor Spear for bringing this to this discussion. And, one of the points in here, in fact, it would be helpful to work with the Creek AC, if there was a lease-to-own agreement or a long-term lease agreement, I think would be most appropriate. But it's just one of those things, if we put them, it's sort of like being on notice, like, gee, we may want to review your lease in another 18 months. It doesn't allow them to move forward, and I understand the purpose of that. And I think if I was getting a lot of complaints about this building or felt that there was a really good use for this building, well, that honestly, that the city really wanted to maintain this building. I don't think we do. I think we're looking to get rid of some expenses, and here we've got a group that's taking care of it, probably will take care of it, probably for another 75 years if we leave them alone. I think it's good we're having this discussion. There again, I thank Councilor Spear for it. If they're interested in a lease to own or a longer-term lease under some circumstances that would be that would keep them there, I would be in favor of that. I'm not inclined to set up a situation where they feel they're going to be asked to leave in any short period of time, or that that we make this that we get this building back where we're totally responsible for it, and it becomes an empty building that no one can use. I mean, it's old enough to it's probably got things that we don't want kids running around doing. Lead paint comes to mind. It probably needs a lot of work to make it truly public. But I just wanted to put that out there.
I remind you, we certainly want to keep discussion going on this issue. We don't seem to have any firm direction selected here, but Councilor Penelakis?
Yes, I along with Jack don't want to see us be fencing around wondering if we're going to throw them out in 16 months. I think every time I think of the city taking over a building, I take a ride out past Lafayette School, and I say, if you got good tenants in it, leave them in there. So I hope we can put this to rest.
Councilor Dwyer?
Well, the park is about to undergo public input sessions.
We had one already.
We had one already, right. So it seems to me that what Councilor Spear is suggesting, what other people have suggested, maybe ideas for other ways to connect with the neighborhood, that those will come forth and should come forth, or, we should invite if the neighbors have, they'd like to use it for a neighborhood meeting or whatever it is, that we already have that mechanism that's started, that would be part of the opportunity to communicate that.
Council Kennedy, first time.
Having lived on Bartlett Street, right across from the Crooked AC, I think part of the neighborhood's question was secrecy of it. They don't understand it. I lived there for 5 years, and all I saw was cars there on Sunday afternoon. And I think that when I know the neighbors over there, their concern is they don't understand what Crooked A or who Crooked AC is, and how many members of Crooked AC live in Portsmouth. I agree that I would have a hard time sitting here if they were only paying $1. But I think since we moved it up to taxes, I agree that we should look at a long-term lease. I respect that thought. But I think that I was very interested in hearing Councilor Dwyer's explanation that neighborhoods have an option if someday they feel they need or would like to use that parcel for their neighborhood. I like the continuum that you set up. So I'm not sure that we should have lease to own, and I think that's what I heard on the table. But I would encourage a long-term lease, but I would also encourage that maybe the Crooked AC could honor the neighborhood and just let them know who they are. Because the secrecy is what's got the neighborhood going.
City Manager.
What we'll do is, since we have the process going with the Pine Street part, what I'll do is I'll talk to the staff tomorrow. We'll try to incorporate some of the conversation when we have those meetings about the Creek AC, and we'll talk to certainly the representatives. I know that just in speaking, and we'll have to get the information to you, Counselor, there was a lot of information provided on the Creek AC, and I'll make sure you get that. Okay.
Well, I think we got the information.
No, I mean, there was history and things that were done in the past. Okay.
Just further discussion, Councilor Reynolds.
Well, I'm glad that it came up, and again, there was, of course, the public input session for Pine Street Playground the other night. I had hoped to make it, wasn't able to, but I ran into a city staff, I think, I remember who it was.
David Moore's staff.
David Moore, actually, it was him, outside coffee shop or something, and I said, oh, how was the attendance? And he said, oh, pretty good. How many, for the record, was there?
I don't know.
Turnout?
I have to find out.
I heard it
Probably
was,
a good attendance.
I heard,
the
I
same.
think he said around 30 people, so it was a good turnout, and I'm thinking, I am not in favor of kicking any organization out that's been a good steward, et cetera. My point is should it be more inclusive?
Why don't we just work them into the process?
Well, I think that without any, I just have to weigh in because everyone else did, and it's appropriate for me to say. I think one can make an argument that they are both historical and cultural and an artifact of the city. And that certainly fits within the master plan. That said, we all have open minds, and we certainly want to have interaction with the neighborhood, and I think it makes sense for us to do that. And if their mission becomes a little more open and a little more understood, that's fine. And if there's a better way to look at how to capitalize and move that building forward in a way that works for everybody, that's something we can consider. And I think we're all here of goodwill looking at a way to do that. So perhaps we do as the city manager suggests, and then we come back and look again. Any further discussion? We have another meeting. With that, we'll adjourn this one, and we'll start in a few minutes. Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the City Council meeting to order, not to be confused with the work session that we had previously. This is the meeting for Monday, June 2nd, 2008. I welcome you to the Eileen Dondero Foley City Council chambers for this meeting in calling it to order, and I'd like to ask the City Clerk to call the roll.
Mayor Farini.
Here.
Assistant Mayor Blaylock.
Here.
Councilor Noveline Claiborne. Here. Councilor Dwyer.
Here.
Councilor Smith.
Here.
Councilor Kennedy.
Here.
Councilor Spear.
Here.
Councilor Reynolds.
Here.
Councilor Panalakis.
At this time, I'd like to ask you to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, but before that, a moment of silence. Could Councilor Spear lead the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
I would ask you to note that under item 4 of your agenda presentation, the Portsmouth High School Student Council Endowment Fund, that will be coming back, but it has been removed. It's not quite ready. So it's been removed from this evening's agenda, and we won't be having a presentation by Mr. Ducharme. So next would be item 5, and we'd need a motion regarding the minutes of May 12, 2008 and May 19th.
So moved.
We have a motion. We have a second discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Now we move to the public comment session. This evening we have 2 speakers. Each speaker is entitled to 3 minutes. I think those present know the rules, but the city attorney will show you the 2-minute and 30-second warning, and then the final thank you means your time is up. Please come forward, identify yourself, give your address, and we look forward to hearing from you. First speaker this evening is Bill St. Laurent from the Taxpayers Association.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, City Manager Bahenko, and Attorney Sullivan. I'm here. I left my notes.
We will not count the time. Since there's only 2 speakers, we won't count the time.
The Taxpayers Association, Bill St. Laurent, 253 Colonial Drive. The Taxpayers Association requested me to address the council this evening of the concern we have for the present city contract negotiations, which are now ongoing. Our concern is for the increase of the proposed fiscal year 2000 budget. The 3.9 or $16.98 per thousand proposed budget increase may not be a true amount, as future contracts, unless negotiated in good faith, could have a profound impact on the fiscal year 2000 proposed budget and the taxpayer. Contract negotiations of a retroactive clause, increase in benefits, stipends, and pay increases of COLA, step, and promotional increases in the same year all add up to a substantial financial burden on the present and future taxpayer. Do the words fixed costs ring a bell? We also discussed the city's unfunded balance account. We understand the importance of maintaining this fund account, but this money belongs to the taxpayer, and what good does it do if the taxpayer does not benefit from these set-aside funds? The fund currently contains approximately $7.3 million. Now, if we take $300,000, a small amount, and use it to reduce the budget rate, according to current figures, $300,000 will reduce the rate 10 cents, and believe me, every penny counts in this ever-increasing economy. We recognize that you listened to the taxpayer during the budget process and appreciate all that you tried to do to keep the budget spending under control, but we also recognize that some of the departments could have cooperated more and made the fiscal year 2000 budget more palatable, but they didn't. We ask that you also put a moratorium on new hires, but replacing present positions should continue. You must not ignore the fact that we're all facing an energy cost problem, which will hit hard this winter. As home heating prices are now more than $4 a gallon, it does not take a mathematician to figure a 200-gallon fill-up, sometimes a 1-month supply, will be over $800, which not long ago heated a house for the whole winter. We realize you understand the current economic crunch and the plight of many of our taxpayers, but you must also understand that most of the current retirement and fixed incomes of our taxpayers are pre-oil, gas, food, and fuel increases, which are substantial. These people must adjust their spending habits without the benefit of outside financial help, which is what they expected of their city leaders. So before you vote on passing this fiscal year 2000 budget and give substantial pay increases, bonuses, and premium benefits in the city contracts, make sure you address all possibilities of budget reductions, because it could make a difference to some taxpayers as to how they will live, especially this coming winter. Bill St. Laurent, could I leave copies for the...
Sure, please do. We'll give them to the city clerk. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Our second speaker this evening and last speaker is Eric Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. My name is Eric Anderson, 38 Georges Terrace, Portsmouth. I just do want to reiterate some of the comments that were just made. First off, I also would like to thank the council for its the public process that they put forward in this budget process. We raised a lot of questions, I believe, and the cooperativeness that we received in explaining certain portions of the budget were informative to us, and I think we can, we've learned from it. And I know it's been a very trying time putting this budget together. I just do want to, maintain some of the previous comments. I think there must, with regards for this coming fiscal year, I think there has to be some real due diligence must be maintained to secure that the contracts that are being negotiated right now are done in the best interest of all, but from this point of view, in the best interest of the taxpayer. I think there has to be maintain a firm position on the bottom line of this fiscal budget to make sure that you don't have to revisit it with any type of supplemental budget process. You've tried to cut it as well as you can, but hopefully you don't have to revisit it somewhere down the line through the course of the fiscal year because of some shortfalls. I think it's very important to be, to say what you're going to pass is what you're going to stay with and not revisit it in any other supplemental budget process. Also, Mr. St. Lawrence and the Taxpayers Association mentioned, we do have an undesignated fund balance within the budget, $7.3 million. We do understand, I understand, or we understand the importance of this fund for the city's bond rating. But I think using or contemplating using a modest amount of this can have a benefit to the taxpayer this fiscal year, whether it's now or whether it's later. This fund was created from taxpayer money, and I think in the economic climate, the door should not be shut as far as looking at possibly using a modest portion of this to try and help the taxpayer. Once again, I want to thank you for letting us participate in this whole budget process, and hopefully you may be able to tighten it up a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you. That closes the public comment session, and next we're going to move on to a public hearing regarding a resolution for the borrowing in anticipation of revenues and taxes in the amount of $16 million. Before we do that, I do think at this point in the meeting it's appropriate to say that since 1995, our city has received an award for its comprehensive annual financial report, and in the last 2 years it has received from the Government Financial Officers Association an Excellence in Budgeting Award. And this is year 2 of that, a budget of clarity and of proper construction. And I think it's appropriate to recognize and thank the financial director of the city, Judy Belanger and city manager and city staff for their fine work in that regard, and we thank you for putting us on the map once again with an award for doing things the right way. Next, we move on to the resolution, and I will not read, well, I guess I will read the entire resolution. This is tax anticipation note. I'd ask the city manager to briefly address it before we have the reading and have a public hearing.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is a resolution that we pass annually just to cover us in the event that we have a temporary cash flow issue, because we do, by state law, have the city bill for property taxes twice a year in arrears. You know, for example, the first half of the tax bill for fiscal 8 was issued in October and wasn't due until December. And then just today, our taxes for 2008 fiscal year, the second half was due today. So we do have that situation where there's a potential for a cash flow issue, but as we do, and I know that the fund balance was mentioned earlier on, as we are able to continue with our fund balance and to limit our cash flow, we limit the amount that we use for tax anticipation notes. But this resolution means that we could potentially borrow up to $16 million. We won't even come near that amount of money this year, but it's something that we would have just in the event that we would have to.
Thank you. I think it's a fairly mechanical item, but it's important that the public hears and understands what it is we're doing. At this point, we're going to open the public hearing. And for those who want to speak on this issue, there are 3 rounds. You can speak for, against, or simply to, and we ask you to line up at the mic and offer that which you have regarding this particular resolution. So I'll open the public hearing. Seeing no one rise for the first time, anyone for the second time? No one for the second time, how about the third? Seeing none, it appears that we have no one present to speak on this issue this evening. I now close the public hearing. At this point, we would ask, we need a motion.
No, I think.
I'm sorry, that's later on in the agenda. I understand. Next, we're moving on to approvals of grants and donations. This one is an acceptance of household hazardous waste collection grant in the amount of $4,756.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Discussion. Hearing and seeing no one with their hand raised. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Next, we come to consideration of resolutions and ordinances. In this particular case, it is the budget. And I would refer this to the city manager before we begin with the resolutions.
Thank you, Your Honor. As you recall, at our last work session on the budget, we did hand out these resolutions to get new council members familiar with what is required to adopt the budget for fiscal year 2009. You do have, obviously, everybody's familiar with the budget that we have, but in order to make this budget law, we need to pass certain resolutions. And the first resolution that the City Council would be asked to pass is for general fund expenditures. In this resolution, the proposed appropriation for municipal, police, fire, school departments, as well as non-operating appropriations as listed separately. This year, because of collective bargaining, we've also listed a line item in the amount of $1 million for this purpose. As a result of the various work sessions with departments and the City Council, the original budget request was reduced by $734,122, and further, there was an increase of revenues by $150,000 as a result of the delay of the parking meter replacement program in the parking department's special revenue fund. Total adjustments for the budget, therefore, was $884,122. This resulted in an expenditure increase of 3.2% and a tax rate of $16.98, a 64-cent increase, or 3.9% over fiscal 08. Therefore, the fiscal 09 budget, both operating and non-operating, would be $82,434,238, or a 3.2% increase over FY08. That is listed in your resolution that you have under the resolution section of the agenda, and that is resolution number 1.
With that explanation, we can begin the process. So the first thing that we would require, I'll read the resolution, and then we need a This is resolution number 1 under general fund expenditures. I'll read the resolution, and then we'll see if we have a motion. Number 1-2008, a resolution making appropriations of sums for all the necessary general fund expenditures for the operation of the several general operating departments and services of the City of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2009, resolved by the City Council of the City of Portsmouth assembled to defray the current general fund expense of the city for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2009, for the specific purpose as stated in the general budget and adopted herewith, and the sums to be appropriated for the general fund are as follows: municipal, $15,549,199; police, $8,613,059; fire, $6,814,861; school, $34,955,754; collective bargaining contingency, $1 million; non-operating, $15,501,365, for a total of $82,434,238. That it is therefore appropriately appropriated the sum of $82,434,238. And that is the resolution. Do we have a motion?
Your Honor.
Council
Mayor?
Assistant Mayor.
Move to adopt resolution number 1, general fund expenditures.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Discussion. Council Kennedy.
This is a hard one. I really want to commend those organizations that came in like we asked at 3.5. I know the police commission worked late into the night to do that. And it's something that I'm hearing from my neighborhood and my community, and I'm sure we all are, the hardships that are going on now. So I want to thank those organizations that did that. I am concerned with overtime. I'm very concerned that it keeps going up at extreme rate. And I think it's something that needs to be looked at, something that we all need to take our pencils and really work at what we can do for our community to help our community. I'm also, during the public hearing, we heard some ideas, and I think we owe it to the public to look into those ideas and investigate. I personally investigated some of those ideas, and many communities are moving towards them. And if we can't move towards them, we owe the public an explanation of why. So I would encourage us next year. I know we're going to have to work harder. I know the pain. As many of you know, I run a multi-million-dollar public budget myself. But we need to work for our community and work really hard and keep going with it. And it's going to be harder and harder. I know that. And but I want to thank you all for trying to come in, for those organizations that did come in at 3.5, and I hope next year everyone can come in at the requested rate.
Thank you, Councilor Kennedy. Further discussion? Seeing none, does anyone care to, well, we can call the question.
Yes, call the question.
Okay. And I think we need a roll call vote for this?
No.
We do not. We do not need a roll call vote.
If you want.
Well, there's no one cares for a roll call vote, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Now we go to resolution number 2.
Your Honor, the resolution number 2 deals with municipal fees that have been recommended by the fee committee. The total revenue generated from these fees is estimated to be $872,000, or 1% of the total FY09 general fund revenues. And the resolution is pretty self-explanatory.
Okay, we have that the fees as offered in the resolution, be it resolved that the attached fee schedule Exhibit A is found to be reasonable and appropriate and is recommended for adoption. The fees denoted with an asterisk have changed and all others are incorporated for convenience, and the resolution is that these fees as attached on Exhibit A shall be effective July 1, 2008. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Second. Discussion. Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Resolution number 3.
Thank you, Your Honor. The next resolution is resolution number 3, sets expenditure levels and user rates for the sewer fund. The adoption of this resolution includes a 2-step inclining block rate structure. The City Council recalls this came out of a process that we went through last year on rate structure. This means that 10 units or one unit equal 800 cubic feet or 748 gallons of sewer usage per month would be charged at a $5 per unit. All consumption over 10 units per month will be charged at a $5.50 per unit. This increase translates to approximately an annual increase of $13.20 to the average residential user, or about $1.10 a month. 80% of all residential customers fall into the 10-unit or less tier. And I also want to mention that later on on the agenda, we do have the first reading on the ability to pay by credit card. Also, we'll be going and hopefully through this fiscal year be billing on a monthly basis for both water and sewer.
So we have a resolution making appropriation of sums of money for all necessary sewer funds expenses for the operation of the sewer system of the city of Portsmouth, New Hampshire for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2009 by the City Council of the City of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, assembled as follows: that there is hereby an appropriated sum of $10,350,019 to defray expenses for the operation of the sewer system for the City of Portsmouth, and that the sewer user rate effective for invoices generated after July 1, 2008 is $5 per unit. I won't read the cubic feet and gallons for the first 10 units of sewer usage per month and $5.50 per unit for all units used thereafter to yield the cash requirement for the operation of the City of Portsmouth sewer system. Do we have a motion?
Moved.
We have a motion. Second, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
Thank you, Ron. The next resolution is resolution number 4, and this is the expenditure levels and user rates for the water fund, similar to the sewer. The adoption of this resolution will include a two-step inclining block rate structure. The first 10 units of water consumed per month will be charged at $2.40 per unit. All consumption over 10 units per month will be charged at $2.85 per unit. This increase translates to an approximate annual increase of $60 to the average residential user, or about $5 per month. 80% of all residents' customers fall in the 10-unit or less tier.
With the indulgence of my fellow councilors, I'm going to just read the actual that portions on this resolution rather than read the precatory stuff. That there is hereby appropriated the sum of $7,127,549 to defray expenses for the operations of the water system for the City of Portsmouth, and that the water user rate effective for invoices generated after July 1, 2008 is $2.40 per unit for the first 10 units of water consumed per month and $2.85 per unit for all units consumed thereafter to yield the cash requirement for the operation of the City of Portsmouth's water system. Do we have a motion?
Your Honor, move to adopt resolution number 4, water fund expenses. Second.
We have a motion, seconded, discussion. Councilor Spear.
I had a question. Does the rate actually change on July 1st, or how does the meter know it's July 1st or June 30th, or how does that work exactly?
Well, you're being charged on the amount of water you use, so we calculate the new rate as the amount of water. So when it comes in, we would calculate that rate on the new rate. So you're actually, we're receiving in the number of gallons you've used,
Right.
and so we just calculate.
So it knows the gallons on each day, which, you know what I mean? You don't have to.
No, that's fine. No, that's every day is what you're talking about? Or
Yeah,
the
like
new-
how does it?
Dave, do you want to
using
come
X
down and
gallons on
speak to?
June, 10 gallons in June versus 10 gallons in July.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yes. So when we cross over
Yeah,
from
how does it
June
work?
30th to July 1st, what is, okay,
Curious.
yeah, okay. Dave Allen, Deputy Director of Public Works.
Yeah, thank you. Councilor Spear, in your case where there's we do have the new metering system going in, that rate would be effective only for the water used after July 1st.
Okay.
Further questions or discussion? Council Kennedy.
I have a question for Dave. Dave, what's the percentage, or how much is this compared to what last year was?
The actual rate,
Yeah, how much has it gone up compared to how much last year went up? Do you know?
it was 190 last year. It is 250 this year. 240 this year, I'm sorry.
Yes, it's 60.
50 cents.
$60 now, but I guess my question is, does it go up on an average of $50 a year?
Well, what this is looking at is the fact that we are in the process of finishing up the design of the water treatment plant. So this is a more significant increase as a result of the.
Let me speak to that if I might. For the last 8 years, we probably have had a very minor increase. I don't know the exact number, but I think it probably ranges about $5 a year, $10 a year on the average.
Yes.
This year, it's going up because we are replacing the water treatment plant. So that will be part of that service.
So is this an expectation then?
Councilor Kennedy?
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Is this an expectation that next year it'll be going up increments of another $60? I guess I'm just trying to let the people know what they need to look forward to.
It will, we're trying to spread this out over the couple of years because the treatment plant they're in design now, and the intent would be to begin construction this year, and construction will be a couple of year endeavor.
But once we hit the new level, our intent is to maintain that and not have any larger increases. What we want to try to do is get the level to the point where we have that increase, and then we pay the debt service over 20 years.
Councilor Kennedy?
When are we going to reach, when do you think you'll reach that level? What's your expectation of reaching that level?
I think it will be, I think next year we have one more increase, and then I think we'll try to level out after that. I think what we're doing is we get it to the point where we're going to fund a substantial amount of the project next year. We'll go out and bond it, and then we'll finalize that in 2 years, and so we'll have enough where the rate will be at a point where it can pay off the debt, that portion of the debt service, because what we'll do is we'll try to issue debt that will have a level type of repayment, principal and interest, so that we would go out for 20 years. So once we have it to that level, that increment that we brought up will be used to pay off the debt.
And one last question.
Sure.
Does the commercial rate go up, like for their amount that they're paying into this? Is that going up the same percentage, or is it more percentage or less percentage in the?
The commercial would be the same.
Okay.
Okay? Councilor Noveline Claiborne.
Is there any way that we could explain to the public, like, if you I don't know, if you turn your faucet off, how much water you would save? I guess I'm trying to think of tips maybe that we could give to consumers. Or do we already do that?
Can we have the city manager just briefly, or Dave?
Well, I think what we've done is we've sent out a lot of informational packets on saving of water, but I'll let Dave talk about the
Yeah,
program.
and I think what we can do is, we've had that up on the website before and on Channel 22. We can put that on the website, a list
But
of.
we've sent out
Right.
kits to help people.
We have the
save water.
conservation kits that are still available if homeowners are interested, that reduce their water consumption. And we do have a number of tips that we'll put them up on the website as far as some simple procedures that can help conserve.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Further discussion? Hearing none. Did I have a motion? We did. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Number 6.
Thank you, Your Honor. The next,
I'm sorry, number 5. I had already opened it. Never mind.
Your Honor, next item deals with resolution number 5, which allows for the expenditure of special revenues and designated fund balances. This allows the city to expend from designated fund balances, donations, federal and state grants as they are accepted and received. And within the body of the resolution, we talk about designated health insurance, the insurance premiums, determination fund balance, all those things that we talk about in stabilization funds to maintain the stabilization of both the leave of termination, health, also special revenue funds such as the parking fund, CDBG, things of that sort, and then any grants that we receive during the year. This covers all those, so that we have to have a place to put those, and those would be in special revenue. So typically, the $19 million will cover us, but we probably have received in that amount probably about $10 million. 19 million we put in just to make sure that we have enough in the event that, for example, one year we had Operation Top Off, where we actually received in about $3 million, I believe, to pay, and we were the regional recipient of that. So it would be a special revenue fund.
Okay, I'm going to read the substantive portions and not the sort of ceremonial portions of the resolution, and then we'll have our voting and discussion. That there is, this is for the people at home as well, that there is hereby appropriated supplemental funding from the general fund designated health insurance fund balance to defray the expenses of health insurance costs in excess of general fund appropriations for health insurance premiums for fiscal year ending June 30, 2009. That there is, well, they're going to do, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That there is hereby appropriated supplemental funding from the general fund designated leave at termination fund balance to defray the expenses of leave at termination in excess of general fund appropriations for leave at termination for fiscal year ending June 30, 2009. That there is hereby appropriated supplemental funding from any other general fund designated fund balance to defray expenses for fiscal year ending June 30, 2009. That there is hereby appropriated any sums received from all other special revenues received from, but not limited to, federal, state, and local grants and donations for fiscal year ending June 30, 2009. And finally, that there is hereby appropriated any sums received from special revenue sources to a maximum of $19 million for the purposes for which such sums may be lawfully expended. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Seeing no hands raised, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That is unanimous.
And the last resolution, Your Honor, is one that deals with an investment policy. State law requires that the city have an annual investment policy adopted, and I would suggest that you waive the reading of this, and since it's about...
I don't know that we need a motion to waive reading. It is lengthy.
It's been the same for a number of years. State law basically tells you what you can invest in. Primarily, we invest in fully collateralized instruments such as treasuries. For example, anything beyond that would be with the trustees of the trust, so it's 100% collateralized.
Okay, thank you for that. So this one I will read just the first portion. This is a resolution approving an investment policy for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2009, that we adopt the following investment policy and we approve it for fiscal year June 30, 2009 in conformance with state law. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That is unanimous.
And, Your Honor, that basically concludes the adoption of fiscal 09 budget.
Thank you, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone from the community, taxpayers, department heads, city councilors, school board members, fire commission, police commission, everybody who worked on this budget. No budget is ever perfect, but it took a lot of hard work and cooperation, and what we did in a civil manner. And we did it in a way that seems difficult for some communities, but in our case, we were able to bring the numbers in a way that demonstrate that we have fiscal responsibility. Going forward, it's nice we're passing this tonight, and it's nice that we've passed it, but I say to everyone as we go forward and look at next year, hopefully we can keep that same level of cooperation and civility, because I fear indeed it will be difficult, and we'll have many and new challenges, some of which we can predict and some of which we cannot, and we're going to need all the goodwill and ability to work together that we clearly demonstrated this year. So thank you for your hard work, and I believe that this is in the best interest of the city of Portsmouth, and I'm proud to report that it was a unanimous vote. Thanks. Next, we will move on to the first reading of the ordinance amending Chapter 1 by the creation of Article 18 entitled Payment by Credit Card Pursuant to RSA 50:52-C. Do you care to address that, City Manager, briefly?
This basically brings forward something that City Council's been asking us to explore and implement for a while. So what we needed under state law, in order to start with credit cards, we needed to have an ordinance adopted. This is the ordinance that the city attorney has worked with the finance director on, and he believes, and I'm sure it does comply with state law.
The motion for the council, the motion that would be in order would be to pass first reading. That's okay. I don't think I cut you off, did I?
No, it's just...
I was saying I hope so.
Okay, noted. That this would be for first reading and to hold a public hearing and second reading, as we typically do at the June 16, 2008 City Council meeting on the proposed ordinance to authorize these credit card payments in accordance with state law.
Moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Discussion. Council Kennedy, Council Spear.
I just have a question. Don't we already do this with our meter parking? We ask people to pay with a credit card. I'm just curious.
That goes through a service.
Okay.
So if we wanted, so that to try to mitigate additional payments to people, we would have to implement this.
Council Spear.
Thank you. I assume when you pay with a credit card to the city, there would be a slight fee attached to that. Now, when you pull money from, I know some utilities can pull money from your checking account directly. Is there, is this also within the realm of possibility for this ordinance?
This would not authorize pulling money directly from a checking account, but it would authorize the arrangement whereby credit card payments are automatically made on a monthly basis.
Okay.
Counselor, well, let's see, Counselor Smith and the Assistant Mayor.
Thank you. I'm very happy to see that this is getting here. I know I brought this to the city manager a long time ago when I first got in and asked for something along these lines, and I'm very happy that he has worked so hard in getting it to this point. And hopefully this is just the first step to making it more convenient for the citizens to be able to pay these bills, as well as eventually getting into parking and maybe even getting to a point where people can do monthly payments of their taxes as opposed to just putting it in escrow for your mortgage. You can have those payments directly to the city and actually save the city funds, and this is hopefully the first step to get all of that going. And I'd like to thank the city manager for working on this and getting it to this point.
Thank you. The Assistant Mayor.
Yeah, I want to echo what Councilor Smith said, and also just comment that I assume that the small fee attached to using a credit card would be to recover the processing fee that is incurred by the city when you accept credit cards.
Yes. Correct. And I'm going to just take the liberty, seeing no hands up, to make sure that I clarify this question. It's not direct deposit from a bank account, but if one used a debit card which was configured in the nature of a credit card, it could work in that fashion?
Yes, and the way this ordinance actually works is it authorizes the city manager to negotiate those agreements with any third party so that the system can be made to work.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councilor Reynolds.
Right. I also want to echo the comments of the Assistant Mayor and Councilor Smith. Thank the manager for working on this, and I'm sure the other staff. I think I inquired about this as well during my first term, and I know it's a big deal to do it. The city attorney correctly points out we're basically passing an ordinance that grants the city manager authority to implement this in the best manner that he sees fit, including to figure out how much service charges would go along with it, et cetera. And given that the city will be in a position when negotiating, with financial institutions, a significant volume of business, hopefully we can do this in a way that will minimize the additional fee to people using this method of payment. There's certainly cost to the city of manually processing things like checks and things like that. So hopefully we can figure out how much we'll save by being able to use more electronic means and minimize the associated fees, for everyone who pays fees, vendors and businesses and homeowners and people who get parking tickets and everything else, so we can have this available for everybody at minimal additional cost. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion or commentary? Call the question. Councilor Smith is requested. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Now we move to the consent agenda.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
we need to adopt the resolution.
We need to
The
adopt-
TANs.
Oh, I'm sorry, the TANs one, the one I was trying to get past earlier. Okay. This is the adoption of resolution authorizing borrowing in anticipation of revenues and taxes in the amount of $16 million. The motion would be to adopt the resolution as presented. This is the item upon which we had the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Roll call.
Like a roll call, please?
It's two-thirds, isn't it?
Yes,
It is a
So it has
two-thirds
to be roll
vote.
call?
Yep. Thank you. Point of order. from
Assistant
Mr.
Mayor Blaylock,
Yes.
Councilor Noveline Claiborne,
Yes.
Councilor Dwyer,
Yes.
Councilor Smith,
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy,
Yes.
Councilor Spear,
Yes.
Councilor Reynolds,
Yes.
Councilor Penelakis,
Yes.
Mayor Farini.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Now we move to the consent agenda. And this would be a motion to adopt both items A and B. If you prefer them to be considered separately, it's not too difficult when there are only items A and B. One is the acceptance of donation from the Portsmouth Garden Club to the Blue Ribbon Cemetery Committee in the amount of $150. And item B would be the acceptance of donations to Art Speak for overnight art, one from Vigilant Capital Management, Daniel Mulkern, in the amount of $100, and one from the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation. So the appropriate motion would be to move to approve and accept the donations as indicated.
So moved.
Second.
We have motion seconded, discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Next, we have presentation and considerations of written communications and petitions. The first is a letter from Chris Curtis of the Music Hall requesting permission to hold the annual Telluride by the Sea weekend celebration of film on September 18, 2008 through September 21, 2008, and the closure of Chestnut to Porter Street for that purpose. Do we have a motion?
To move to city manager with power.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Discussion. Hearing and seeing no requests for any. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. We move to item B, a letter from Steve Miller, Conservation Commission Chair, report back regarding the establishment of the Open Space Committee. And the motion would be to accept, if we were to do this, the Conservation Commission's report back to establish an Open Space Committee as a subcommittee of the Conservation Commission, including creation of an Open Space Committee and setting the committee's charge, and refer it to the mayor to appoint those committee members. City Manager, do you care to speak to that?
I know that there is,
Kennedy, you're
well,
next.
we do have the representatives here from the Conservation Commission. The chair, Steve Miller's here, along with the environmental planner, Peter Britz.
Okay, noted that they're here. We have a question. It might be pertinent. Council Kennedy.
Oh, actually, I don't have a question now.
Okay. Council Spear.
I just wanted to, I had
We
an
need a
opinion.
motion before we have discussion. I broke my own rules, so
I
somebody.
make a motion that we accept the recommendation from the Conservation Committee to establish an open space committee.
Second.
And the rest of it that I read, I presume you're not averse to that?
No,
Okay.
I'm not.
Okay, that's the motion. We have it seconded. We're now in discussion. Council Spear first, then I'll move down to this end.
I think this is a great idea. I just had a
think
quick
Councilor
comment
Spear
about the
seconded.
makeup of the committee. Two comments. First of all, with 11 members, it looked a little unwieldy. I wonder if a smaller committee might be a more efficient machine. And the second comment is, I wonder if it would be helpful to have a city councilor member on the committee. Sometimes it helps to have a liaison, because this will come back to the council eventually, and someone who's been to all the meetings might help with that. So those are my two comments on that.
Thank you. We'll consider those, certainly. Councilor Dwyer.
I certainly appreciate the willingness of the Conservation Committee to do this. I do want to bring up, though, that at the last meeting, Councilor Panalakos, Councilor Smith, and I put forth a alternate vision for the composition of committees going forward, which I understand will have a report back from the city manager. I think the committee that we suggested take on open space was the first one that we'd have a report back on. So it doesn't seem appropriate to me, even though this is a very good letter, it doesn't seem appropriate to me that we take action on this until we have considered the report of a subcommittee that was designated by this council to bring forth alternate ideas.
I'll just take prerogative of the chair and ask if Steve Miller, do you care to speak to this? Do you care to? You've heard what has transpired, and I just wondered if you wanted to talk about your report at all.
He may not realize what I'm saying.
Why don't you come forward? Councilor Dwyer was indicating, and it is indeed true, that a subcommittee of the City Council has been looking at organization of various committees that might, in the first instance, in a report back that we're expecting from the city manager, impact considerations of how this committee will work. So I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, or
Actually, no.
Your Honor, if I might.
Please.
There are various boards and commissions that the subcommittee looked at. I was instructed to look at the Recreation Board, and as part of that, it may include a combination of a the Pierce Island Committee into the Recreation Board or something of that, depending on the ordinance that would be crafted by the city attorney's office. So,
The proposal that we made was to look at recreation and open space. So that would include, that's why I raise it, because I think there are several different possible configurations. Conservation and open space is one of them. Recreation and open space is another. That's the one that our committee happened to put
right.
forth.
And my understanding is that you had not suggested to combine the Conservation Commission and Recreation.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's
I didn't want to
correct.
confuse
Not
people.
No,
Just-
absolutely
just-
not.
I want to just, the first item that I was charged to look at was the Recreation Board, and working with the city attorney to come back with a configuration that would deal with the regulation of dogs and the issue on Pierce Island. I think you wanted to clap some of that in as well.
And add open space. I think
And
I'm
add
not communicating well, because that's why it's a conflict here, that we were not simply looking at recreation dogs in Pierce. The whole idea was to build a new committee that had
I
larger
understand what you're
funding.
saying, but I was unclear of that.
Well,
Okay.
procedurally, I think what we need to address this evening is that
Well, then you need to
there was an action that was taken at the last meeting. It probably enumerated some things. We're not sure at this point in time exactly what that enumeration was. Perhaps we could look at the minutes. Perhaps a recess would be in order.
No, I think that,
Table.
let me just say that the Recreation Board is what you asked us to look at, and we don't have the report back ready tonight.
Period. So we did not look at open space, and,
Well, we haven't done the report yet.
right, right.
But
So, we have a motion pending. Counselor Dwyer has expressed her concerns. Further discussion?
Right,
Counselor Smith?
thank you. I make a recommendation that we table this at this time until we get the report back. I'm also concerned with the one thing that came from the letter, and that is because I ran into this issue when we tried to do a subcommittee under the traffic and safety, and I went outside of the realm of the committee members that were on traffic and safety when I was trying to create the Safe Routes to School. And I was told at that time that I could not pull in members outside of my committee.
Right,
Which would be a suggestion that this letter came from. So I'd like to table it for clarification of that issue, as well as clarification coming back from the report back from what we, Councilor Dwyer and myself and Councilor Panalakis began last week.
I'll second it.
Okay, I know that it's procedurally, I'm not speaking to the issue of the motion, if I might, Your Honor.
Because the motion to table is not discussed. It's either
I'm
voted up
speaking
or down.
to
Yeah.
the question that arose as it relates to going outside the committee. That was to appoint people, not to have them serve with you. The appointment would, if you recall, Counselor, it was to appoint the people, not to create. This council asked at your previous meeting for the Conservation Commission to look at a subcommittee that would include such representatives from Recreation, from Pierce Island. That was a charge to the Conservation Commission. That was different than when we talked about the Safe Routes to School Committee, because
you.
that never came before the city council.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Now, a motion to table, if I am correct, does not bear discussion. Is that correct?
This gets to that very complex question of whether motions to table are actually motions to postpone. It is actually a motion to postpone as a proper motion under these circumstances, and it is debatable.
Okay. Well, we're going to call it, will you accept it as a motion to postpone?
Absolutely.
Okay, so then it can be debated. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yes.
Second. It was seconded.
It was seconded by
Okay.
Councilor Panalakis.
Discussion. Councilor Kennedy.
Yes, there's a lot of stuff happening right now in our city, and I'm wondering if this is being set up so that maybe you guys can get some extra support in kind of figuring out open spaces and understanding open spaces and trying to figure out what should be and not. And my concern is how much is moving, how progressive it is, and putting this off for a long time. So I guess I'm asking if it's appropriate. Steve Miller, what do you think of crucial timeline on this?
Okay, now, do we need a motion to suspend the rules in order for Mr. Miller to be speaking at this point in time?
Well, I have an item of information that may be
If you would
relevant.
be so kind.
The city manager has asked me to give this item greater priority, and I will have the report completed this week.
So we'll have for the June 16th meeting, so for the report relative to the Recreation Board and the combination or the idea of bringing together more items on the Recreation Board. I think the real issue, Steve, is the issue of the configuration of the board, not the idea, at least this is, maybe I'm wrong here, but I think the idea would be to continue to have the Conservation Commission take the lead on this particular issue, but have the, there would be other representation I suspect that you might want.
Councilor Dwyer.
I'm not communicating because I think this is the only time, Mr. City Manager, that I thought you were wrong in the 3 years that I've been doing this. What we attempted to propose and attempted to communicate, and we might not have done that right, was a different kind of thing, which in fact would be directly in conflict with this proposal. We attempted to propose a new board that would take on the functions of recreation, open space, as well as some, and parks. So that's why I raised this, because this is giving the Conservation Commission the open space piece of it, and we have open a discussion on giving that to another group. So, you know, it may go one way or another, but I think we shouldn't prejudge.
Well, I guess, Counselor, I guess one thing I would have to say is I guess I'm somewhat confused, and we'll try to straighten that out with the subcommittee, because the council actually voted this over to the Conservation Commission with these lists of participants. So maybe it was just crossed, and maybe we'll have to figure it out.
I'm going to I see a lot of hands raised. I think that we are in a situation where there is some confusion, and I apologize for that. We could further talk about that confusion, and I even have in front of me the minutes which I could read, and I guess the question would be, you know, I guess, so that just for the information of the council so that we knew, the minutes indicated this. Councilor Smith moved to instruct the city attorney to draft an ordinance to create a new recreation, parks, and open space committee that would assume the functions of the existing recreation, Pierce Island, cemetery, and dog committees. In addition, once this item has been addressed, the report on the ad hoc restructuring committee will come back to the city council for consideration of the remaining 4 recommendations. Seconded by Councilor Dwyer. Now, is that the motion that passed?
Yes.
All right.
That's most of the part.
So,
I can understand the confusion on that. It was our intent that the importance of to work on something for open space was going to continue, but it was also our intent to look into having that added under a recreation, parks, and open space committee and work all of it together.
I can appreciate that, and I can appreciate that you're indicating that that was the intent. These are the minutes that were adopted as a result of that meeting. So we have to determine a course of action from here, because I think the two are in conflict, and it's not worth perhaps debating that. If we move to postpone this, does the city manager have a suggestion as how we can procedurally put this where we need to be? Because I think what's going to happen is this motion, as indicated in the minutes back in time, does not say, it does not clearly exhibit what your intent is. And I think we should come back with a written motion pursuant to Rule 9, which I'm in the position of chair of being able to ask for, so that somebody gets it right in terms of what we're trying to do. City manager.
Let me just say that I've not had the opportunity to meet with the subcommittee, but that being said, so maybe I misunderstood. The one thing you have to remember is the Conservation Commission, what we're trying to do here with the Conservation Commission isn't really dealing, and I guess it's crossing over to do 2 different areas. The Conservation Commission was looking basically to inventory all open space in the city. Everything from properties that we might have out on Lang Road to working with on the Great Bog, on all those, just coming together and developing a whole inventory. It's not really going to talk about specific uses in the parks per se, but if I understand it correctly, the Conservation Commission was going to utilize some of the money it statutorily has the ability to utilize for open space to do some of these, some of this study. So that is the way it ended up with the Conservation Commission. And certainly, we'll look at it and come back and reconfigure it. But I thought that that when we sent it over to them, that was the way we were going to proceed from all open space, wetland, everything.
Mayor Farini.
I think that to perhaps move this along is that the request made by Councilor Smith and that we've discussed as it was written in the minutes, understanding that we can clarify the intent and rewrite that and perhaps have a written motion doing that at the next meeting. The question might best be, we can't stop city business for this reconfiguration necessarily. And in this particular case, it's a discrete task that they're seeking to engage in. And so for that reason, notwithstanding the interest we all have in considering these various reorganizations and whether they would work or not and what they would do for us, I think this particular piece of work that's being suggested that we've already voted on is something that should go forward, notwithstanding what you're going to do. So I just will say to fellow councilors that I intend to support this. I do not intend to support the motion to postpone because I don't think it's needed in this particular instance. Okay, thanks. Sorry, I have the mic back. Recognize Councilor Dwyer.
I would agree with that if that's what this memo said. I think the idea of adding a task to do an inventory and using conservation funds for it makes a lot of sense, and then being able to look longer term at a committee. But this letter to us is about establishment of an open space committee. So perhaps there's a way that we could carry forth what you've said, that the Conservation Commission, a subcommittee of the Conservation Commission, prepare an inventory as was described, and that we still then consider what our committee structure should look like going forward.
Well, I guess at this point, all due respect to the mayor, I guess at this point, to try to make sure that we don't go off on a tangent, maybe we ought to postpone to the June 16th. I'll talk to Steve and to Peter, and we'll figure out, and we'll be talking about the report back. So we'll try to bring it together. I was unaware of that intent by the subcommittee, so I'll talk. We'll figure it out. So.
Do we need, okay, I will reconsider my comments, but Councilor, I'd rather Assistant Mayor.
Yeah, I actually two things. I think number one, what's being asked here, I look at it as purely a subcommittee of an existing commission, which is a quasi-judicial commission. So I think we're getting confused. I'm reading it that way because they're both using the phrase open space committee. One is a subcommittee of a quasi-judicial commission that is in place. The other is a combination of some use committees that are not quasi-judicial that may be combined for streamlining the process. And so I further will comment that I think we need to be careful that we don't muddy the waters with interlinking our quasi-judicial commissions, such as the Conservation Commission, the Board of Adjustment, Planning Board, with committees that are made up of citizens and maybe a counselor and experts for specific uses and specific purposes, to advise the city council. So I think maybe we need to tread slowly on this because it's a major overhaul. It involves a lot of people and their commitment to the city, maybe long-term commitment, maybe hopeful commitments because they want to help out in a certain area, whether it be the dog issues or whether it be recreation issues, swimming pool issues, whatever. I think they all have merit, but I think we need to keep them all in perspective. And I honestly think the confusion is they're both using the phrase open space, but it's two different functions.
We're still discussing the motion to postpone. Councilor Spear.
Reading the letter, the letter seemed.
Yeah, point of order.
Point of order, Councilor Pedalakis.
I don't see that this is an open space letter. It's about one area.
Well, noted, and I think that we're going to have to vote this and decide what we're going to do. But let's keep, we have discussion, so Councilor Spear. Remember, this is the motion to postpone.
Postpone, yeah. I'm going to vote in favor to postpone with the intention that when we come back, I'd like to see some change in the focus of the letter. To me, the letter seemed more about the establishment of a committee and less about the tasks that they want to accomplish, tasks and timeline. So when it comes back, it was more of a task-oriented letter with timeline and deliverables and closure. I feel very easily that we could all, in agreement, support it as the other process continues along, because we'd see this one as being a temporary committee with a specific purpose in mind.
Councilor Angelos, Councilor Kennedy, Councilor Penelakis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll vote to support the motion to postpone, because I think it's the right thing to do. There's clearly confusion, and I think we should take a short amount of time, as the city manager suggested, to straighten that out, and so we can act on this hopefully at our next meeting. There's no, certainly in my mind, there's no, nothing negative about the postponement and the request and the goal of the letter and the task that the Conservation Commission wants to undertake. I think that's something, and you're right, we talked about it here and we agreed that we needed to do it.
I think it's important.
Maybe, if I could, it is about a task that needs to be done, and maybe the term task force would help us. But I'm going to support motion to postpone. Hopefully we can straighten this all out in the next 2 weeks.
Okay. Councilor Kennedy, then Councilor Penelakis.
I'm going to vote against the motion to postpone. And the rationale behind that is how can we go ahead and look at committees without even knowing what our open space is? We asked the Conservation Committee to look at open space, to see what we have. We don't even know what we have. And we're going to slash committees without even finding out all the information. I think this is a great opportunity to go out there, have a group of people that are knowledgeable. Steve Miller is very knowledgeable, and kind of give us some information on what we're dealing with, whether it's open space on Pierce Island, whether it's open space way out in the waterways. I mean, I don't know. We need this information, and I think this is the time of year you want to do it. You know, if we postpone, we get a question next month. You're looking at August with meeting schedules. I mean, this is the time we want people to go out and figure out what we have. And so I don't think we should hold back on it. And it gives us information. If people want to slim down the committees, this gives you information for it. However, I'm going to go on record as always saying, and I think the more people involved, the better government we have. So.
City Manager, thank you. Councilor Kennedy, anything further?
No, that's it.
All right, City Manager.
I think the confusion comes in that we sent this over to the Conservation Commission on April 21st. And so that was before we talked about when the subcommittee didn't have the report. I just want to read something from that report that the City Council sent over to the Conservation Commission. Create an open space plan that prioritizes parcels for acquisition and preservation, assesses the most appropriate uses the city-owned parcels, and explores greenway linkage opportunities between these parcels. Establish an acceptable use policy for conservation lands to guide public access and management planning. This is what was sent over to them, and then we had the subcommittee meeting concurrently or subsequent, I'm not even sure, I don't know the schedule, and then so I guess my suggestion at this point is that in order to use everybody's time effectively, because these are all volunteers, which they've mentioned, especially the Conservation Commission that has a lot on their plate already, that we actually define. I think what we're going to do now is take what we have here, the letter from the Conservation Commission. We're going to take what we have as the motion that came for the report back for the recreation and open space, and we'll try to craft something that will address this issue. But I wanted to just state that it's something that we need to look at, because it really talked about conservation lands. And I think Councilor Kennedy is correct. It deals with more than just recreation. It goes well beyond that.
So we still are debating the motion to postpone. Councilor Kennedy, Councilor Dwyer.
As the person who started this, I just want to say I am fully in support and voted for what the city manager just read. And as Councilor Spear said, had that come back to us with that, I would have no hesitation in hoping that the Conservation Commission could move forward with that. I think what we just got back was a letter that was not about that. So I I don't know if it's too late to salvage both postponing the committee, but then having a motion to, in fact, go forward with the function. Because I don't want to delay the function. I just think we've got two things crossing here.
We have 2 weeks, basically, and I can work.
Okay.
And if Mr. Miller would work with me and the environmental planner, we'll talk to Bob, and we'll try to put this all together.
Okay, Counselor Penelakis.
Yes, I agree with Christine. I just don't see this change, but I'm reading a letter that's talking about Sagamore Avenue. It's not talking about open spaces. And the front of it does, but the second letter is all about Sagamore Avenue
Well,
and a piece of land out there. I think that if you're going to do a committee of open space, it should be all the open space, not function on one area.
If I might.
City
Your Honor.
Manager, please.
That was the intent, Counselor, because that letter came in, and as a result of that letter, what I just read on April 21st is how we handled that letter. We did not want to specifically deal with that one parcel. What we wanted to do is look at all open space in the city. And that last time we've inventoried all open space in the city was 1972. And so that's really what we want to do here. But I guess at this point, we should probably have the motion to postpone so I can have the opportunity to talk to Mr. Miller and talk to Peter and the city attorney, and we'll come back with a report.
Counsel Smith.
Thank you. I just want to go on record as I was saying, I don't want to stop what the process is. I think taking an citywide inventory is very important, but it's that function I'm looking for. The actual function of now what do we do and how all that's planning out is where I think we're looking for a different one. But to have a subcommittee that's based up, 4 minutes conservation, rec board, Pierce Island, 1 member from the Trees and Greenery Committee, 4 members from public at large, with 1 of them being from the Friends of the Creek, that's really creating another whole group that I just think that is just too much overwhelming on such an issue such as going out and taking an inventory. And that's what, if they want to go out and just take the inventory portion on it, I think that's fine. And hopefully when we come back next month, we'll be on our next meeting, we'll be able to get this straightened out, to be able to have them focus on the inventory portion. And we can continue the work we've begun on now what happens to those lands.
Are we ready to vote, councilors?
The question.
Move the question. Roll call, please.
Assistant Mayor Blaylock.
Yes.
Council Noveline Clayburgh.
Yes.
Council Dwyer.
We're voting on the motion to postpone?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Councilor Smith.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
No.
Councilor Spear.
Yes.
Councilor Reynolds.
Yes.
Council Penelakis.
Yes.
Mayor Farini.
Yes.
8-1 passes.
I'm going to take this so there's no motion pending at this time because we've postponed it. But I'm going to take this opportunity to remind councilors of 2 rules. And I ask you to look at your city council rules. One is Rule 4, council meeting agenda submittals prior to 12 noon on Wednesday. And the second is written motions and roll call. Rule 9. Every motion shall be reduced to writing if the chair so directs or if any member of the council requests it. And upon request of any member, the roll call shall be called upon any question before the council. I would just respectfully ask my fellow councilors, as we get into the world of these particular committees, I'm going to request as chair, and I'm serving you with notice now, that I'm going to request that those motions be written, preferably submitted by the deadline as required by Rule 4, and that they be written with some precision. And the reason I say that is we have had a number of discussions about what our, and meaning no disrespect to anybody, I've done it myself, about what our intent was versus what the motion was. We really have to try and make sure that it's pinpointed when we come in. So I just ask out of courtesy to all concerned in the interest of time, I'd try to be mindful of Rule 9, especially if it's complex in nature regarding these committees. And with that, we move on to,
We gave minutes.
let's see,
C.
I lost my place.
Item C.
Item C, under
From
the
Debbie Gold.
letter from, okay, we have a letter from Debbie Golter regarding property located at 4 Sagamore Grove Road. Does anyone have a care to make a motion, for example, to accept and place on file?
I move to accept and place on file.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Next, we have a letter from John Ducey, New Adventure Entertainment LLC, requesting approval of lights and awnings at 172 Hanover Street. The motion would be to refer to the planning board for a report back. Mr. Ducey, I don't know that we necessarily require you to speak at this time, but I appreciate that you're here, and if we need to consult, we will. Otherwise, the motion that would be in order would be to refer this to the planning board for a report back.
Refer to the planning board to report back.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Next, we have a thank you letter from Catherine Murray Houle regarding the granite bench at the Powder House. Appreciate receiving that very kind and courteous letter and the courtesy of their family. Do we have a motion to accept and place on file?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. City manager's portion, if you please.
Thank you, Your Honor. The first item deals with approval extension of employment agreement for Dr. Robert J. Lister, Superintendent of Schools. Self-explanatory, the memorandum in your packet.
The motion, go ahead, Counselor.
I move
Penelakis.
to accept the contract.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Discussion. Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you, Your Honor. The next item, item number 2, the report back for Brora license request to erect a sign within a public right-of-way. They've asked to withdraw this at this time. They need to evaluate to make sure that the sign is not within the wetlands buffer. That was a question that was specifically asked by the planning board. It appears it might be in the wetlands buffer, so they simply asked for it to be withdrawn, and I'm withdrawing it at this point.
Noted for the record.
The next item is request for approval of poll license agreement 630452. The information in your packet I've provided, as I usually do, copy of the information regarding the poll licenses, as well as copies of the pictures describing where they're going to be.
The motion would be in order, would be to approve the request for PSNH for the poll license agreement as indicated. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All, discussion. I can't ever recall it, but, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
One other item that I have, Your Honor, that isn't on, I had a call today from Stephanie Secord. She would like to have the city council have a tour of the new Discover Center before the next city council meeting. I'm wondering if the city council wants to do that. It would be, I don't know, we could have it at, she said it wouldn't take more than a half hour, so if people want to meet there at 6 o'clock, have a tour of Discover Center, the old library where the Historical Society is now renovating. Do we want to do that? What's your pleasure?
We won't make that a motion, but what is your pleasure? Council Smith?
I think we should. I have been through this. The work that they have done out there is amazing. It's incredible how much they have done in such a short time, and with volunteers, very limited monies, and they've really pulled something together there that looks terrific. The film that they have, the art display is amazing, and I'm really proud of the work that they've done, and I hope we all get an opportunity to see it.
So I will then, within your packet for the next meeting, I will make sure to advise you and confirm that time.
Thank you very much.
6 o'clock on the 9th? I mean, on the 16th?
Correct.
6 o'clock on the 16th.
I will make sure that is in your packet.
Thank you very much. And now, City
all I
Manager,
have,
do you
Your
have
Honor.
anything further? Okay, you're all done. It's my portion of the agenda, and I will move to an appointment for consideration. Charles Oxford Jr. for appointment to the Portsmouth Housing Authority. And so the next meeting that would be on to be voted. We now have the appointments to be voted. The first is Ruth Griffin for reappointment to the Portsmouth Housing Authority.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Christy Cardoso, appointment to the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Citywide Neighborhood Steering
So
Committee.
moved. Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. James Melfi for reappointment to the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Citywide Neighborhood Steering Committee.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, it's unanimous. And William St. Laurent, reappointment to the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Citywide Neighborhood Steering Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, it's unanimous. We also have a letter of resignation from Albert Charest from the Portsmouth Housing Authority Board, and a motion would be in order to accept that with regret.
So moved, as well as a letter to go back to him?
He will indeed, and we will also, we have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
We will also have our yearly meeting when we honor everyone who has served on the various boards and give them mayor's awards and so forth. I have no further reports. I turn it over to Councilor Smith, and at the same time, I'm going to give the gavel to the Assistant Mayor.
Counselor Smith.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to accept our traffic and safety minutes of May 8th.
So moved. Or second, whatever it is.
Second, thank you.
Any discussion?
If I don't recall that there was anything that required an ordinance coming down, with the exception, I wanted to point out on Daniel Street, there is it's going to be a reinstitution of a driveway along Daniel Street, which would require the moving of 2 spaces. In the minutes, it was talking about the possibility of eliminating them. Mr. Parkinson has done a great job of being able to shift the spaces around, and we will not have a loss of parking spaces along Daniel Street.
Oh, good.
And if anyone has any concerns out of anything anything else on that action sheet, I'd be happy to talk about them.
Counselor Dwyer.
Well, I thought it was an amazing agenda, because there were a lot of things that are of broad interest. I wanted you to just talk a little bit about the Route 1 bypass, since that's been an object of some issue. Number 13 and number 14, the two that are related to state issues.
Yeah, actually, on those, we got the letters back from DOT, this regarding number 14, in trying to get the traffic lights down there, and we were very unhappy with what their letter had stated, which was they wouldn't do it. So we are sending back again to have them reconsider that. The other one was basically the same issue, and I was working with the developer and trying to come up with some alternatives to having a crossing at that point. So we're still working with the state on those.
Okay, so in other words, the state is not necessarily in favor of the pedestrian crossing.
Correct, because they felt that it would be backing up too much, causing too much backup further down Route 1, and the recovery time would take too long. But at the same point, it's something that we feel is needed as a safety issue, to have some way of getting pedestrians safely to cross that area of the street.
Counselor Dwyer.
Well, those are, two really important issues that have gone through a number of our boards, and I'm wondering if we ever, or if it's appropriate, or if it would be helpful to have council support back to the state on that type of thing, or is that something that is not appropriate?
I think that'd be for the city attorney.
Counselor Kennedy.
Well, my question would be too, along those lines, if we do report on it, does it become our liability? That's a free opinion on it.
I think that'd be a city attorney.
Care to comment, Bob, on the legality of this council getting involved in the traffic safety comments to the state?
I do not feel that there's a liability on the part of the council in offering up. There's purely a legislative policy type decision. There's an immunity for that.
But is it a good idea, or is it just one more?
It's not, I don't think that's actually relevant to the question whether or not there's liability.
So maybe we could make a motion to have a recommendation from the city council to add to the letter that we're putting back up to the Department of New Hampshire DOT in support of putting a crosswalk.
Well, there's a motion on the floor to accept the minutes. It's been seconded. Any more discussion on the accepting the minutes of the Traffic Safety Committee?
I just would like to ask you about the business B under handicap space at the high school.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. We had discussed that. The fire department had indicated that they would not be in favor of it because they do not want to have any vehicles put into a fire lane, as well as we have sent back and asked the school board to make a recommendation to see if they can make some, because the land itself does fall under the school board, so that they can make a recommendation of possibly assisting to get a handicap space or provide a easier way that this one employee there will be able to access the building and get to work, because she's having a difficult time getting from the current handicap spaces into where her office is. So we'll be waiting to hear back from the school board on that.
Does that mean that I will not see the police cruiser parked there each time I go out there in the fire lane?
That would probably be a good question to get to the police chief, and we'll see what they say on that.
Any more discussion on the motion to accept the minutes of traffic and safety? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Please note my abstention for the record.
Mayor's abstained. It's
So now we have a motion
801.
for,
So before we move on to the action sheet of the parking committee, I'd like to make a motion to, as was just brought up, that the city council pen a letter that will also be in agreement in helping support the case to have a crosswalk across that strip of Route 1 bypass for safety concerns as this development goes forward.
Second.
That's a motion. It's been seconded. I can be the chair on this one. Councilor Spear.
and I guess the reason we need the signalized pedestrian pass is that there isn't enough room on the Cottage Street side with the two properties there to have either an overpass or an underpass. That's right.
I can kind of.
Someone needs to answer this. Okay, Councilor Smith, you care to have a...
You're absolutely correct. To be able to put we looked at putting a tunnel underneath. The underpass, the police department felt, because of its location, and they would not be able to easily view what was going on in an underpass, that they did not want to have the tunneling. They just felt that just would create too many headaches, too many situations, too many possibilities. The next thing is to have an overpass bridge, and that would require a land taking of a home that is there at the corner on Cottage Street, and none of us felt that was appropriate as well. That may be something the DOT does later on when they're talking about reconfiguring Route 1, the traffic circle. We did not feel as traffic and safety that's an issue that we should get into, and nor that anyone want to support. So the best way would be to then put a crosswalk itself. The difficulty about it is that there will be a recovery time on Route 1 bypass, that when someone pushes the button and stops the traffic, there will be a recovery time as things progress down Route 1. And that recovery time could be as much as 20 minutes, where people are going to be delayed a little bit at different stoplights. Sometimes when you're driving along, you hit one light and maybe make it through the next. This may, you may hit 3 of them. So, but we felt that having that slight delay in people's timing, and when they say 20 minutes to recover, it doesn't mean someone's going to have an additional 20 minutes of travel time. It means that's by the time the system gets back to normal. The actual traveling time could be just another minute or two for an actual driver. So we felt that with those limitations, it would be best to ask for a push button, stop the traffic, allow pedestrians to cross the road safely.
Okay, remember the motion that is pending is to write that letter. The Assistant Mayor, then Councilor Spear.
Yeah, I feel strongly about this. We need to send a strong message. We are isolating a whole neighborhood is one factor. An existing old neighborhood will not be able to get across the street. Secondly, they're creating an area where there's going to be a couple of restaurants, a fast food one and a slow food one, I guess, or a regular sit-down, and other reasons to cross the street, and people will be staying at this facility wanting to get across the street. It is absolutely necessary that there is a way for pedestrians to get across there. We cannot create this island, this dangerous island, because people are going to be running for their lives, and it's just absolutely not fair.
Councilor Spear.
I fully support the motion for the same reasons, but I wanted to talk about, in the event that the state again denies us, the ideas of the underpass and the issue of taking land.
Well, just if I may.
Yeah, you may.
I'm going to say that may be out of order.
Okay.
In terms of what we're discussing at this point in time. And if that becomes an item for the Traffic and Safety Committee,
I'll be bringing
then
it
I'm
back.
sure the chair would be more than happy to have that brought forward, and then it would come back to us in the ordinary course. Councilor Kennedy.
I have a question. What options did the state give back to you guys, knowing that it could be quite dangerous? Did they give you anything back, or what are they thinking?
I don't recall, but maybe Mr. Parkinson could address that one. Yep. Apologize for putting you on the spot. Do you recall?
I don't have the letter with me tonight, but we can get you a copy of that. The state basically was not saying totally no, but they were listing a bunch of requirements that they would need in order for them to totally grant the installation of a crosswalk at that location. And I know one of them was a sidewalk on the Cottage Street side was one of them. What we have done through the various boards is now turn that back to the developer to get their ideas of how they could meet these directives from the DOT in order to have a crosswalk at that location that DOT would approve.
I can add a little bit, Your Honor. That letter
This is the city attorney.
That letter that Steve Parkinson's talking about, when it was received, it was provided to me, and I sent it to the developer's attorney, Malcolm McNeil in Dover, asked for his comments as to how the developer would satisfy the conditions established by NHDOT, and I have not yet, to this date, received a response.
Okay. Councilor Kennedy.
This might be premature, but then why are we going to send a letter to aggravate the DOT when we really haven't processed it out yet? When we really haven't given everyone a chance to figure it all out and it's sent to the developer. It's the developer's responsibility. I mean, I guess I'm perplexed on that one.
I think the intent of the committee is to send a letter once we have the information back from the developer as to their meeting the various requirements, and then at that point, if we still have differences, to go back to the state and get more help from them.
So Councilor Smith, that letter would not go out until such time as we receive.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I didn't clarify.
Councilor Kennedy.
I'd have a hard time voting for this until we hear back from the developer and getting all the information, getting all the data, getting all the facts.
I think that it would.
Oh, just a minute. Sorry.
I think it would be appropriate for the city council to get on board and to back this as we work out the details with the developer.
Okay. Did you have something to say, Mr. Parkinson?
It's important to understand that the developer's approval for their project is contingent on this requirement of a crosswalk. So they need to come back to us with their intentions of meeting those requirements.
Okay. Further discussion. I saw Councilor Noveline Clayburgh, then Councilor Penelakis.
I actually have a question for Steve. Isn't there a crossing at Coakley Road right now?
No, there is not.
That you don't press the button on the light and
There
you're able
is
to cross
there is
the
no
street?
crosswalk at Coakley Road.
Okay, thank you.
There are other crosswalks in the corridor further down, like at Greenleaf or Wilson Road or a number of the other controlled intersections.
But not at Coakley Road.
But not at Coakley.
I thought there was. I don't know why.
Councilor
Thank you.
Penelakis.
Yes, are the developers working with the state, or are they working with the city?
The developers have been working both with the city and the state because they had to go to the state on their traffic plan and their access and egress to the bypass and through to the intersection of Coakley Road. The requirement for the crosswalk came out of the municipal groups, both the planning, the traffic safety, and the TAC review committee.
Second question.
If you please.
Then it would be imperative that this council send a letter encouraging that crosswalk.
As we get more information back from the developer, it would be appropriate at that time.
Thank you.
Okay. Further discussion. Councilor Smith.
Thank you. And just what I want to add as well, that we've had the request, regardless of what the development is, we've had a request from the neighborhood itself. They're already having the problem. So even if the development doesn't go through,
Right.
this is something that,
She
that,
was wild.
that
She
people are
didn't
looking
get
for because, you know, as the assistant mayor said,
came down
they
to
are
eight.
kind of on an island out there, and this is a safe way for them to traverse as well. So it's not just based on that development, although this is a way for the developer to, you know, get his project. We can piggyback on that and have the costs incurred.
Thank you, Councilor Smith.
Move the question.
Further discussion, we have a motion, we're moving the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Or are you?
I oppose.
We have one opposition, Councilor Kennedy.
I'm waiting for the day to come back.
Noted. And now, we have item 2, Parking Committee Action Sheet and minutes of May 8th, 2008. Councilor Smith.
Yeah, I'd like to ask for approval of our action minutes from our May 8th Parking Committee.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Councilor Dwyer.
Just a question on where we are in terms of progress of the residential parking, because I know that's part of one of the items, just broadly. Is that something that's going to come to council at some point?
Councilor Smith?
Thank you. As we are going through exactly what a residential parking program will kind of pull together, we're looking at what other communities have done. First of all, whatever we decide for a residential parking approval, it's almost unanimous amongst the committee that a resident means a resident of the city, not just a resident of that street. So that it would, because it is still a public street and would be still available to any resident of this city. But as we're going through, we're finding a lot of issues with how do you enforce it? What kind of cost is this adding to the city? How much do you charge for the passes of it? And then when we actually start breaking it down further, saying, okay, if we start doing this, how do we handle such things as guests who are coming to see a resident and so forth? And we're realizing just how this thing could become a life of its own, and just how complex it is. So that's why we're kind of still taking our time, working through all of it. This is it's a bigger deal as you get down into the finer details than just say, wouldn't it be wonderful if we did this? We currently have a couple of streets that are resident only parking, and just the administrative and the headache that the police department has in going down there and literally looking at license plates, finding out do they belong there, do they not belong there, is for them is an administrative headache. So how soon will we have something back for council? I don't have an answer, but I can tell you it won't be by the end of the summer.
Yeah, what our intent, if I might, Your
City
Honor,
manager, please.
Our intent was to bring in some of these neighborhoods, the parking committee, bring them in and tell them what the pros and cons are, because it's not all positive.
Right.
And so we're a small city. We're not, so we need to make sure that we don't create unintended consequences a street over and create a real problem. So we're going very slow, and we also want to bring in and talk to the individuals that have requested and explain exactly what this all means, because it has a lot of ramifications. So that being said, we could talk about this. This is one that could go for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about it.
Councilor Dwyer.
I think that would be a very helpful thing to do, what the city managers just described. Sooner rather than later, it's at least for me, one of the more frequent questions that I think I get or that people bring up. So I think what you're raising, just to explore what the issues are, would be very important.
I'll get together with Councilor Smith and we'll look at something and try to put it together.
I know we wanted to pull together a time where we could start bringing in different groups, but it's going to be a while before we get a report back to council.
There are a variety of groups, et cetera.
There are a variety of groups, as well as just the administrative side on how to handle and how to administer and staff something like this. We just have to be cautious with.
Thank you, Councilor Smith. Further discussion? Hearing none, there's a motion seconded regarding the approval and acceptance of the action sheet in the minutes.
Just one qualification again for the action sheet, and that is, in the minutes, it does say it would be a loss of the one space on Daniel Street, again, due to the hard work of Steve Parkinson. That is not going to have to take place now.
Noted. So we have the motion. We're going to vote the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Miscellaneous or unfinished business? Seeing no one raise a hand, the next motion, which would be in order, and I will not rule it out of order, would be a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.